these guys. Hello, greetings, everybody. I want to welcome you all here to the Sunday morning breakfast live here on the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I'm the host of the show. Delayed computer took some time to try to work my way through to the opening part. It's just kind of slow today. I'm not really sure why. Usually it's not like that with computer. Anyways, we're here today to do an episode of course, Sunday morning breakfast. And I picked the year 1967 and the albums I own from that year, and a list of albums that are of interest to me. I didn't get them all, but I got most of them. There was one album I wasn't sure I owned, but I couldn't find it anywhere, so I think I don't own it. So anyways, we're going to go through them. Just going to sort through these two because there was a mistake here. Can't find it now. Here it is. Okay, we're good. So basically, we're just going to talk about that year, 1967, which is kind of at the beginning of the album-dominated years, I guess, from this point forward. Actually, I think probably 1966 is the year where bands started to make albums. This year is one of the most prominent of the early years, though. Lots of really good stuff came out in 1967. A lot of bands got their start that year as well. There's a lot of bands. And as you will see as we go along, many bands had multiple albums. Now, this was kind of common back in the early part of the album generation, 67 through to probably the end of the 1970s. Yep, welcome to the channel, Sarah. That's my daughter's name. I'll soon not forget that. Anyways, so that era from the beginning of the album era in the mid 60s through to the end of the 1970s, even into the 80s, lots of bands were putting out double albums in one year. And then they started going off and just one, and then pretty soon it was every few years, and then some of them were 20 years apart. So what I'm going to do is I'll talk about the ones I have, a little bit about each of the albums, and then we will also then go through some of the stuff I would like to have. There's plenty of stuff out there I'm just not as familiar with, so I didn't put that into my interest in buying list because I'm not familiar with them, so I can't really tell you that. So the first album today is, we're going to start with this one from Buffalo Springfield. This is their second album. So I think their first two albums are probably their best. Their first one is really good. This one is kind of not quite as good, but still pretty good. And then the third one maybe a lot less than the other two. But this one came out in 67, their second album. Of course, for many of you who are maybe not familiar with this band, I'm going to just talk a little bit about this particular album and the people involved in it. So here's what it looks like in book form. This is probably the original type cover of the album. Not much to it. So basically, this is the band of Stephen Stills and Neil Young. Those are the two prime players, although there are quite a bit of other people on here as well. And I can't get this out again, even though I put it back in. I'm not really sure why I did that since I needed it. I'm getting pop-ups today. Not good. So, of course, you've got Richie's on here. Richie Farrow, I think that's his name. Yeah, Richie Farrow. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. I'm sure somebody will tell me. Most of the stuff written by Stephen Stills, Neil Young, and Richie Farrow. Those are the main writers for the band. Some of the other musicians also did some writing, but not too much. Maybe little ads on here and there, right? Actually, I don't even see a single one. Dewey. Yeah, it doesn't give much information on this. It tells you, but it only gives their first name, so you don't even know. Dewey Martin, of course, is on drums here. And James Burton on dobro, sorry. So I see what they do is they give you the first and last name the first time they appear. Jim Filder is also on bass here. So you got quite a few people playing different instruments, but basically the main guys, Neil Young, Stephen Stills, Richie Furrow, those are the main guys in the band, do almost all the singing and writing. So this is a pretty solid album. Mr. Soul, really good song. Some of the other stuff this is a little bit, to me, this is a little bit more folky than the first album, although all their albums have a lot of a folky element to them. But yeah, pretty good. I do like the cover on this one. Maybe I like the cover on this one the best of their three albums. It's just kind of, for me, it's a little bit unfortunate. I wish they'd done more stuff, but they didn't. They went off into various different areas, some solo, some into other bands. But yeah, a good solid 60s band, the Buffalo Springfield Again album. I like it a lot. Next up is going to be an album that for many people, they either love or hate this album, or they don't really like it, or they love it, one or the other. This is Pink Floyd's The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. This is a very different Pink Floyd than many people will be used to. That spacey kind of progressive psychedelic feel. Well, the psychedelic feels here, but the spacey kind of progressive elements that many people think of the Pink Floyd in the 70s are not really present here at all. This is a more straightforward kind of pop psychedelic album. This is actually one of the albums by Pink Floyd that I'm not overly crazy about. I don't dislike it. I don't think it's a bad album, but compared to some of their other stuff, it's a bit of a letdown to me. I know that's not the truth for everybody. Syd Barrett still pretty much the dominant force here as far as the writing and the singing and being the leader of the band. It wouldn't be till the next album where he really started to fall apart. And then they had to replace him. He was probably a problem even here, but maybe not as much of a problem until they got between the albums. But this is their debut album, Pipers at the Gates of Dawn. So this is where Pink Floyd started. They had actually were around a couple of years at this point, but hadn't released anything. So this is kind of their first album, Pink Floyd's Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Interstellar Overdrive is on here. This is probably my favorite tune on the album. Matilda's Mother's pretty good too. So that's the second album. That's my first Pink Floyd album. So the next two are both Beatles albums. The Magical Mystery Tour, which is one of my top 5 favorite Beatles album. I love all the stuff on here. So the history of this album is that it's the only one released by itself in the United States. I don't believe there was never a release in the UK. This is kind of a bunch of tracks thrown on that were kind of individual tracks and B-sides and stuff like that weren't on any of their previous albums. And I love this album. It has a lot of those songs that are among my favorite Beatles songs. Magical Mystery Tour, the opening track, great. Fool on the Hill, this is, to me, one of the most underrated of the Beatles songs. I don't know that it's really underrated, though, but it's still a great tune. Blue Jay Way is good. Your Mother Should Know, kind of a quirky song, but I kind of like it anyways. I Am a Walrus, of course, is probably at least early on in my history, was probably my favorite. Probably my favorite Beatles song. I got that off the Blue Album, of course, which was at the time the album that I was familiar with when I was a kid. My uncle owned it, and sometimes I stole his albums out there so I could listen to them. Strawberry Fields Forever, another classic, great song, one of their best, I think. Penny Lane, this is a big kind of hit for them, but it was never a song that I really took to very quickly. I would listen to it. I don't dislike it or anything, but it's never been one of my favorites. Baby You're a Rich Man and Hello Goodbye, both fantastic deep cut songs. And All You Need Is Love, of course, is one of their most famous songs. But this album, from top to bottom, just a whack of hits. It's a hit machine, this album. And hence the reason why I liked it. So originally only released in the States. I'm assuming it's in Britain by now, but yeah, so it's long been one of my favorite tracks or favorite albums. The other album from that year, of course, is the more famous of the two, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band. This was kind of the beginning of the psychedelic era. And this is also the beginning of the concept album era. So there's a couple of things going on here. Is this fully a concept album? I think it is. Is it fully psychedelic? Well, in apparel and attire, for sure it is. There are quite a bit of psychedelic stuff on this album, but there's also quite a bit of poppy stuff as well. Of course, the title track is really good, and it usually coincides with A Little Help from My Friends, which is the second track. So those, with A Little Help from My Friends, as I grew into the Beatles when I got older, this was probably my favorite song by them. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, another great, fantastic track here. Very psychedelic in its nature. The rest of the tracks on here are hit and miss with me. Some of them I like quite a bit, some maybe not as much. The 13th track, Day in the Life, actually eventually became my favorite track from them for a long period of time. And then, of course, the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band reprise, which is a little bit more interesting, I think, but not terribly dominant. But this is a strong album by the Beatles for a lot of reasons. A kind of classic album, one of those most notoriety albums, an album that has been cited as being one of the most influential. Some people have cited it as being the great influential album that led to progressive rock. I see where that came from. It also led to psychedelic rock, but a lot of people see this as kind of the end of rock and roll, this album changing the dynamics of rock. And a lot of people don't like it. They say that it kind of ruined rock, but I guess it depends on what you like, right? So the next couple of albums are from the same guy. This is Jimi Hendrix Experience, their debut album. A fantastic album. Probably most of his big hits are on this album, the ones that people would know. You get a greatest hits collection. It usually features a lot of the tracks off of this album. A very influential debut album. Lots of elements going on here. You got hard rock elements going on here. You've got that psychedelic stuff going on here. You've got some heavy bluesy stuff, and that heavy guitar part, which Hendrix, I think, was one of the first to be known for. So you've got, of course, it opens with Purple Haze, which is one of the signature songs by by Jimi Hendrix. And The Experience just definitely was probably my first Jimi Hendrix song experiencing. I thought, wow, this is pretty heavy. Manic Depression, another heavy track. Hey Joe is a bit of more of a bluesy track and maybe a little bit laid back, but still a great song nevertheless. I Don't Live Today. I love this song. I love the live version. I had a live album by him, which had this song on it. It was very kind of distorted. Just fantastic tune. The Wind Cries Mary, very underrated song. I think it's a better song than it gets listed for. Uh, Fire, of course, another heavy, upbeat, up tempo, heavy song by him. Foxy Lady, another great heavy hit for him. Are You Experienced? The title track, really good, another psychedelic type of song. Stone Free, another pounding kind of Purple Haze like song. Um, and Red House finish off the album. So a good number of his well-known tracks are on this album, about at least 7 or 8 really strong, well-known tracks. This is a great album. I don't know if it's not my favorite, but I think it's probably his best album. This one comes with a couple of albums as well. The cover, nice picture of the 3 of them here on the back side, with also an inside flap one over here. Sorry, I'm on the wrong side. Yeah, good, strong. To me, it's one of the best 60s albums out there. Next up is probably my favorite Hendrix album. His second one, Axis Bold as Love. This was my first one, but his second, very psychedelic album. Lots of oddities on this album. Lots of kind of bluesy stuff too. Some pop, very pop, and a couple of heavy songs, but not generally speaking. I think of this as a less heavy album than Are You Experienced. It's got this strange EXP at the beginning, which is kind of an opening to the album, kind of different. Up from the Skies is decent. Spanish Castle Magic. This is one of Jimi Hendrix's greatest underrated tracks. I just love this track. It's just fantastic. Wait Until Tomorrow, another one that falls into that same category. Little Wing, one of his more well-known, but kind of a bluesy, softier track, but fantastic too. If a 6 was a 9, another great kind of poppy track. You've Got Me Floating and Castles Made of Sand. These are both excellent songs. You Got Me Floating is a little bit more up-tempo, a little heavier. Castles Made of Sand, very kind of slow, psychedelic track. I love it. She's So Fine, the one track that I always remember that Noel Redding sung this song, just fantastic. Little Miss Lover. This is another good underrated song, and then the title track, Bold as Love, really strong song, I think. One Rainy Wish. This is not a song that this is the one song on the album that I've never really kind of warmed up, but overall, this is a strong album. Probably my favorite of his albums, only because it was originally my favorite and my original album, but it's definitely in competition with Are You Experienced. The next, we have 2 albums from another band who's come recently to my discography in the form of a box set, but both albums are really good. So you've got the Electric Prunes debut album here. I love this cover. You see it better on this backside here. Very psychedelic in nature. I would say this album's a little poppier, though. It's not as psychedelic as some of the stuff to come forward. Does have some psychedelic elements to it, but basically, to me, this is more of a kind of quirky pop album. So their debut, and then the second album by them, Electric Prunes Underground. This is kind of a little bit of a strange album. It's very psychedelic, lots of psychedelic flavor to this album. I actually like this one the best of the 2. Better get a drink here, or we're gonna be coughing up a storm. Nice picture of them in X-ray here running. The weird thing about this album is all of the guys on the album were kind of removed from the band after this album, and other people were kind of put in place. That's the way I see it. That may not be in the actual fact. As most of them did not do any of the writing for the band early on. They had their own writers that would come in, and then after this album, which is quite a good album, their third album was a totally different set of musicians. So they put a lot of the album together session-wise, the third album, and a lot of the band members were excluded from that. But this is to me their best album. Strong, very what you want your Electric Prunes to sound like. Very psychedelic with some lot of weird noises and some really good stuff on here. I'm still exploring this band quite a bit, so I'm not as familiar with the titles of the songs as I am with the sound of the albums, if that makes any sense. The Great Banana Hoax is good though. So, anyways, that's the Electric Prunes, psychedelic band from the 60s. Next up is a band that most people will know, and probably this will be the album they know, which is the Surrealistic Pillow by Jefferson Airplane, released back in 1967. I don't think this is not their debut album. The reason I know that is because this girl here was not on the original album. That's Grace Slick. She was not the original singer. But you've got Grace here, Paul, Jorma, Jack, Spencer, and Marty all on album. So 6. It's a pretty bluesy. To me, this is a pretty bluesy album. It's not what I thought it was going to be when I first got it. Of course, it has the hit White Rabbit is on here. Really classic, well-known Jefferson Airplane song. Probably my favorite Jefferson Airplane song. But there's a lot of really heavy bluesy stuff on this album. Yes, there's some psychedelia here too. No doubt about that. But I just found this to be a lot more heavy bluesy than I thought. Grace Slick isn't as forward on this album as I would like her to be, although I do like White Rabbit and she's very forward on that. So great album. Surrealistic Pillow, Jefferson Airplane. Next up, you got the Rolling Stones, who had several albums this year. I think there was like 3 of them, but this is the one that I own. This is Between the Buttons. This is a little bit of a, when I think of this album, it's kind of a Brian Jones centered acoustic guitar album to me. He's prominent in here, showing off abilities that I wasn't really familiar with him having. He's quite a good guitar player, much better than people generally know. This album is known for a couple of hits. Ruby Tuesday, which is one of their big hits. There's a lot of deep cut songs on here too. The other hit was, of course, Let's Spend the Night Together, which opens the album. These are 2 of their more well-known tracks, probably 2 of their big tracks early on. Maybe not so much now, but definitely back in the day, these were 2 of their bigger tracks. There's a lot of stuff on here that's quite good. Who's Been Sleeping Here? All Sold Out, Miss Amanda Jones, and Something Happened to Me Yesterday. These are all kind of deep cut songs. So when I think of this album, I think of a more bluesy kind of acoustic-driven album than some of their other stuff. Initially, I liked this a lot. Kind of faded on me a bit as I listened to it, but definitely dominated by Brian Jones's acoustic guitar parts. So that's the Rolling Stones, Between the Buttons. Next up, a couple albums from a band that everybody knows. This is one of those bands that you either like them a lot or you can't stand them. I've been on both sides of that. I initially, for 40 years, couldn't stand them, and then a light went on, and I fell in love with this band, and now I like them a lot. I have all of their original Jim Morrison albums. This is the first of which, probably the best of which as well. Doors' debut album, a lot of big hits on this album for them. Well-known tracks that still get a lot of airplay. Good morning, Vaughn. Welcome to the show. This is one of the top, to me, if I was putting together a top 20 or top 50 albums of all time, this is going to be on it. If I was being, what would you call, unbiased. So it wouldn't necessarily be my favorite, but if I was ranking who the albums I think are generally conceived as among the best albums of all time. This one's got to be on that list for sure. Break On Through opens the album. Really good track, really well known track. Soul Kitchen is good. It's more of a deep cut, but definitely a well known track as well. The Crystal Ship, 20th Century Fox, another well known track, gets quite a bit of airplay as well. The next song, the Alabama song, Whiskey Bar, this is one of my favorite of their tracks. It's kind of a quirky song, but the Doors did a lot of different kind of songs that they weren't easily pegged. Yes, they had psychedelic. Yes, they had pop. Yes, they had heavier tracks. Maybe they were a little folky at times too, but they were never pegged into any particular hole, in my opinion. This song is one of those quirky songs that sticks out in my memory every time I hear it. Yeah, I'm not surprised that it would be in there. People that, if you like this band, a lot of their stuff's going to be in your top album collection. I didn't like them for the longest time. And then, like I said, at some point 2 or 3 years ago, the light went on after 40 years. And now I listen to them a lot. I like this album. I like all their albums, but this one to me is probably their best. Of course, it has Light My Fire, one of their most well-known, famous tracks. Backdoor Man was good too, though. I Look at You, End of the Night, Take It as It Comes, and then The End. So a lot of these tracks, like I said, Light My Fire, Break On Through, 20th Century Fox, Alabama song. These are all very much played still songs out there. Great album. And one of the better covers. I like Jim Morrison. I think he's the face, and in this case, literally, of this band. The other guys are all good, don't get me wrong, but I don't know where they go without Jim Morrison. Obviously, after he died, they didn't go very far. Next up is their second album, Strange Days. I didn't like this one as much, and it has the distinction of following that masterpiece, and so unfairly or not, it just isn't as good an album. I've warmed up to it in a lot more in recent years and probably give it more credit than I gave it when I first heard it. Strange Days. This is it's kind of a weird album cover, and a bit of a strange album, if you ask me. It's amply named Strange Days. Your Lost Little Girl, Love Me Two Times. That's, to me, one of their best hits, best underrated hits, I guess. Should be right up there with some of their other stuff. Unhappy Girl, Horse Latitude, Moonlight Drive, People Are Strange. People Are Strange is another one of those tracks that I like a lot. It does get some airplay on the radio and stuff like that, but I don't think it's as famous a song, but it should be near the top as well. My Eyes Have Seen You. I Can See Your Face in My Mind, and then ends off with When the Music Is Over. Another track certainly fits into this category. I think the problem for this song is that it's a bit on the long side. So especially in that time period where short songs did well and long songs were not noticed, this was a unusual track that way, but still really good. I like the back cover too. It's kind of interesting. For the longest time, I thought these guys were British. I don't know why, but obviously they're American and just very strong, one of the strongest American bands ever. So for those of you who don't know who the Doors are, this is Jim Morrison on vocals, Ray Manzarek on keyboards and marimba, Robbie Krieger on guitar, and John Densmore on the drums. Names that should go down in history. Now, does anybody know, are the Doors actually in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I can't imagine they wouldn't be, but I don't remember hearing anything about them. Yeah, welcome Grandizer, Prog Monster in the early AM here for sure. So this is kind of the last of the albums that I own. Really good album, highly recommend it. It's of the Doors albums. This was probably my least favorite initially. It didn't do particularly well on my playlist, but it's really come on over that time period since it's gone off. I think it's just great. I don't think they're like Canadians. I don't see. I always thought they were kind of British, mostly because of their covers and stuff, but clearly they're an American band. So that's the stack that I have. I'm going to show you them all back just in case you came in late and didn't see who I talked about. So we have The Doors, Strange Days, The Doors debut, The Rolling Stones, Between the Buttons, great album. Jefferson Airplanes, Surrealistic Pillow, great album. The two Electric Prunes albums, this one, which is Underground, their second one, and their debut album, which has a fantastic cover to it. There it is there. The Jimi Hendrix Experience. This is Axis Bold as Love. It's their second album, really great. Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to be talking about some other stuff as well, Grandizer, not just the albums I own, but other albums that I don't own that I would like to own. Of course, Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced? Their debut. You've got Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band from the Beatles, maybe one of the most famous kind of concept type albums in history, or maybe one of the first ones as well. This one, which I love, Magical Mystery Tour. And then you have Pink Floyd's debut album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, kind of a psychedelic cover. Not such a psychedelic album, though, probably more of a poppy album, but it does have some psychedelic stuff on it as well. And then, of course, Buffalo Springfield's second album, Again, which I think is a pretty strong album. It's got some Mr. Soul is kind of the big song on here, but it has Bluebird. It's got a few other ones, Rock and Roll Woman. There's some other stuff on here really quite good. So those are the albums I own that I talked about. Now we're going to delve into some of the albums I would like to own that I haven't talked about. So we'll start first with the American version of the Beatles. Use that term loosely. The Monkees. So there's a couple of Monkees albums out there that came out this year that I would like to have. I do like the Monkees music, even though it's kind of early Beatles-ish, very poppy, very radio-friendly commercial pop stuff, like the Monkees, Headquarters, both really strong poppy albums. But I always liked the show and I always liked their sound, even though you know that they were kind of a manufactured band. They're not. They originally weren't a real band, but they took that life on themselves as the show went along. They wanted to be more of a real band, and so they went on tour and did stuff that, even the Partridge Family did this as well. But the Monkees were the band that I liked. Yeah, the Monkees, great harmony, great kind of vocal pop stuff, very Beatles-ish in a lot of their ways, and they emulated the Beatles. They were supposed to be the American version of the Beatles. They actually did quite well for a manufactured band. The next album I would like to have is from the Youngbloods, their self-titled debut album. Yeah, very good. Now, to me, Last Train to Clarksville was kind of the song that drew me into the band. I'm in love with that. I liked some of the Davy Jones stuff because it's very kind of Beatles-ish. The Youngbloods, this is an album. I've listened to this maybe once, this self-titled album, and I liked it. It definitely will be a band that I will be looking to get their albums from. The Byrds. So the Byrds are the next band up. They had Younger Than Yesterday was the album. Now, I have a greatest hits by the Byrds. It's kind of a hit and miss for me. I like some of the stuff quite a bit, and some of the other stuff I don't like at all. Yeah, that's probably what it was. That was probably where that song was written about, in Tennessee. There you go. Anyways, so this is a band that I've kind of am a hit and miss with. I like some of their stuff quite a bit. Some of their other stuff I'm not as big a fan of. So maybe it'll grow on me. The next album up is a Velvet Underground self-titled with Nico on the band, of course. Yeah, so very interesting album. I do like the Velvet Underground. They're kind of a different type of band. They have a lot of elements to their music. The psychedelic elements are the ones that draw me in, but there are other stuff that they have that I quite like too. The next band out is the Pretty Things. I do have a couple of Pretty Things albums. I like them. The one that came out this year, Emotions, of course, I would like to have it to go in the collection as well, being a kind of collector of sorts. The next up is Gordon Lightfoot. So for those of you who are not Canadian and do not know much about Canadian music, Gordon Lightfoot to me is a folk rock pop singer from the 70s who had a string of major league hits. And this album, The Way I Feel, is an album I would like to own. So the stuff I have is basically a couple of greatest hits albums where he has all of his most wonderful stuff. But since I've grown more and more to like him, I've decided that I would collect whatever I could by him. Now that he's gone, he ain't going to be making anymore. So The Way I Feel was the 1967 album. Next in line is Moby Grape and self-titled. This is a psychedelic band that I discovered when I was doing the psychedelic series that I did. Was it back in January? It's my favorite psychedelic albums. This is a band that I quite took to almost immediately. Fantastic band, I think. Then you've got the Rolling Stones, who we already did between the buttons, but they had several other albums out that year. Flowers was one of them, and their Satanic Majesty's Request, sorry, kind of a kind of spooning themselves off of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band. Very similar looking album covers. They just went more of the dark side of the coin, I guess. Yes, yeah, I remember that part. I think the only no, sorry, start again. I think the only monkey that's still alive, correct me if I'm wrong, is Mickey Dolenz. I think the other three, Peter Tork, Mike Nesmith, and Davy Jones, are all gone. If I'm correct. Yes, you're right. That's a good analogy, like the Moody Blues. That song. So we'll move on to the Stones had the two albums, the Satanic Majesty's Request. I didn't really care much for this album initially hearing it. It was kind of sounded like a forced attempt to be psychedelic, but it really didn't work too well. I'm sure other people will not see it the way I see it, but still, I like that for that reason. I mean, I didn't like it for that reason. And Flowers, I don't know much about this album at all, if anything, other than I know it's a Stones album. And if it's a Stones album, I'm interested. The next band is called Kaleidoscope. So they had two albums this year, Side Trips and Tangerine Dream. Both albums are very kind of got that psychedelic flavor to them, and definitely albums I would like to get, but not an easy band to find, as many of these 2 or 3 and done album bands that came out in that period of time in the 60s for the psychedelic bands. So that was probably ranging from 67 maybe through to 70 or so, and then that era was kind of done. And these bands who couldn't adjust to that just disappeared. But this band definitely has some good stuff. Next up's the Yardbirds. They had the Little Games. This is, to me, anything with the Yardbirds is of interest to me. Not easy to find. I don't tend to go online looking for this stuff. So if I don't see it at the record store, I tend not to think of it too much. But definitely albums by them I would like to know. And this one, of course, is one of those albums. Yeah, sometimes these remakes of stuff or second tier things, they do this a lot. Like sequels don't usually do as well as the originals. New TV series based on old TV series don't fly often. They discovered, though, in the 70s that a lot of shows, spin-off shows, did just as well. If you took one of the characters off the show and gave him his own series, that worked out well in a lot of cases. You look at the Mary Tyler Moore Show, just about everybody did a spin-off on that one. And they did well with those spin-offs. But when you try to remanufacture something that had initial chemistry, it doesn't always work out. So yeah, the next album and band is Canned Heat, self-titled. This is a band that I was interested in. Of course, it's difficult once again to find this stuff, unless I could find it online if I'm willing to pay for it, or if I really like to order online, which I try not to. Sometimes, if I really want an album bad enough, I will order it online and pay whatever it is. But there's not a lot of albums out there that are that demanding to me that I got to have them. Next up is the Everly Brothers. These has long been a band that I love. Been listening to the Everly Brothers for over 40 years. I have a greatest hits, but I would like to get more of their stuff. The album here that came out for them that year was the Everly Brothers Sing, one of the best harmony duos of any band in history. To me, they are kind of the beginning of those harmonies things. They just did it better than anybody else. There's that natural harmonization that happens when you're brothers as well, and they definitely had that going on. I actually at a convention I was at, me and another guy got up and we did a couple of the Everly Brothers tunes. I think we did Bye Bye Love and All I Have to Do Is Dream. And it went very well. We rehearsed for it for a period of time too. So it was kind of fun. The next one up is the Vanilla Fudge's debut album. This is a kind of a different type of band for me. So their earlier on stuff, they did a lot of covers. I think they did them reasonably well. I tend to prefer bands that do their own stuff, but they do have some decent stuff in their repertoire. The Kinks, of course. Something Else by the Kinks. The early Kinks is kind of very British sounding. I tend to be of the type of person, because I came into the Kinks in the 70s. I like their 70s stuff. It's harder, it's clearer, it's cleaner. The songs are more memorable, at least to me, anyways. So that's just my take on the Kinks. Next up is the Beach Boys. Got to have the Beach Boys in there. I like the harmonies of the Beach Boys, one of the great harmony bands of all time. The album's Smiley Smile, and the other one is called Wild Honey. Both are decent enough albums. I've heard them before. It's hard. They're easy listening to bands. Some people think of them as syrupy, and they have a lot of that kind of beach, California beach scene music, or as Jimi Hendrix would call surf music. I do not understand. I get it, but still some decent stuff by them. And one of the great music writers in history, Brian Wilson, in there as well. Love is a band that I considered for my series that I ran back in January, Forever Change. They have a lot of albums out. I actually could have bought the entire box set, got their entire discography, but I chose to take the Electric Prunes instead. So sometimes you have to make those hard choices. That was one for me. Cream, Disraeli Gears came out that year. I was when I was younger, a bigger Cream fan than I am now. They're a bit too bluesy and jazzy for me, and I have a strong distaste for their drummer. And I really don't like any of the members of the band except for maybe Jack Bruce. I kind of like him, but the other guys I'm not big fans of. Although I really detest the drummer, so I'm not going to go any further with that. Moody Blues, Days of Future Past. This is a band that in the last year or so I've kind of discovered when I was doing that psychedelic thing, and just a little bit before that I started listening to some of their stuff. They have some really good stuff, which surprised me. I always kind of dismissed them as a pop band that I had no interest in, but there's a lot of stuff, especially early on, that's quite good. And of course, the last album on this list is Jefferson Airplane's After Bathing at the Baxters. This is another kind of early psychedelic album. Would like to get it. If I see it, I'll get it. I'm not going to go hunt it down, only because the hunting down thing usually costs more than the album's worth. Very few albums are worth the price that the internet wants you to pay. So, and I tend to give my money to the record store in town so that they stay in business, so they can keep bringing me stuff. Excuse me. So those are the albums that I would like to get. There's of course tons more albums out there, depending on your taste in music. There's a lot of jazz albums and then eventually some jazz fusion stuff, but basically a lot of jazz stuff out there, because jazz was making albums long before rock musicians were. And so they were pretty much established in the album genre of things, not so much in the singles. But I'm not really a jazz fan, so to speak. I like some aspects of jazz. Depends on how it's mixed, I guess. Some bands and some albums I like quite a bit. Pretzel Logic, the debut album from Steely Dan, love both of them. Some of the other stuff, maybe not so much, but definitely a genre that probably will grow on me with time. It just hasn't really taken off for me at this point. So the two kind of genres over the last maybe 2 or 3 months that have kind of really taken root with me is the psychedelic genre and the southern rock, blues rock bands. And you'll see that when I do my new albums, purchase several southern rock bands purchased in that deal. And I got a new album in there too, so we'll be talking about that next Saturday when I do my new albums purchased. I only bought 5 this month, spent quite a bit, and have to kind of cut back now that the rent's going up. Got to eat first. That's important, right? So that's my list for today of the stuff I own and the stuff that I would like to own. I'm sure there's other stuff, like I said, out there that people would like me to talk about, but I haven't explored their discography, so I don't really want to talk about something I don't know anything about. That's pretty much for the show today. I'm very happy that you all showed up today and added. I hope you'll all. Yeah, that's just the way it is. We live in Canada where they can't get enough out of you. Can't get enough of your love, right? Anyways, so we will be doing a show tonight. Hopefully, some of you people will. I don't know. I don't like. I don't like Ginger Baker. I think he's an arrogant SOB. I don't like to speak ill of the dead, so I'm not going to say too much. No shaving for a while. Decided I'm going to go in incognito for a while. Got to hide. There's lots of people out there that don't like me. No, I'm just kidding. So anyways, we'll be doing tonight's episode of Into the Progverse. Will be the final episode of these kind of a series of episodes I've been doing for the last couple of months on the 70s years of prog. It's going from 1970 through to 79, excluding 1973, because I did that series on albums from 1973. I think, was that last month or the month before? I think it was last month, and the psychedelic one was in December. Yeah, pretty sure that's what it was. No, I do that on Saturdays. I do the afternoon mass. Don't want to be in the church with a million kids running around and parents looking at me like, who's this old man? Don't need that. So yeah, so that's the that's the that's what we're doing tonight for Into the Prog Verse. We'll be discussing the prog albums from 1979. To me, kind of the final year of prog. Not that there wasn't prog going forward, but there wasn't nearly as much. Kind of started downhill in 77, really took a bit of a turn in 78 and did a nose plant in 79, although there's some decent stuff. But what I find in the last couple of years of prog, 78 and 79, is that even the bands who were doing prog were also doing other stuff on their albums. So their albums were becoming diluted with in what I call intrusion into the prog scene. So that's what we'll be doing for Night Into the Progverse. I haven't really decided what to do for next week's episode of the Sunday morning breakfast. I'm thinking of doing something similar to what I did today, but with something from the 70s. So I'm thinking what I might do is jump ahead to 1976, which was the year I had originally thought to do, but decided I would start with 1967 since it was a fantastic year in rock. But to me, 76 is a big, big year in rock music. That's the year I kind of came in full blast. I started in 75 with the Kiss Alive album and then had maybe, I think there was one other album I owned. So I think I had two albums. I think it was an Aerosmith album I found in a bucket somewhere. And those were the only two. But in 76 is when I really started to jump full blast into the rock world, pretty dominated by Kiss, but Kiss had two huge albums in 1976, maybe their two best or two biggest or two most well-known, whatever you want to call them. So I may do 1976. There was a ton of stuff happening that year. So I'm considering that, or I may go to a specific band. I haven't decided, but we'll see what happens. I will definitely post it sometime today, whatever that's going to be. Breakfast with the Beatles, Breakfast for the Prog Monster. Yeah, I think the Beatles one is probably going to take that to the nth degree. Yeah, well, we did the psychedelic month. I think it was December where I did kind of a mix of both those. You had some that were full on psychedelic bands, and then some that were kind of had elements of psychedelia in not all their songs, but in some of their songs. Some of them were starting out that in that direction, some were coming out of that direction. So we did that. So if you want to watch that whole series, you'll see a lot of psychedelic bands throughout that. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of disco, so you're not going to hear much about that. I've never been a fan of disco. I kind of don't mind ABBA. The vocals in that band were fantastic, and some of the songs were great. But other than them, I'm not a huge disco fan. Yeah, disco was a dance thing. When you went to the dances, that's what you wanted to hear. But other than that, I didn't want to hear it anywhere else. It kind of reminds me of that movie called The Martian with Matt Damon, where he's stuck on the planet and the only records that he has are all cassettes, are all disco cassettes. I think that would be like being put in hell. Anyways, that's it for today's show. We will see you all next Sunday. I will post later what the show is going to be about, whether I go to the 76 or I do something else. I have a couple other ideas that I'll get to. And then tonight, of course, we'll be doing Into the Progverse. So maybe if you feel like more chatting, we will be open for business tonight. So take care. Have yourself a good evening. And everybody have a good day. Take care and goodbye.